Are we live now? Anita, are we live? Thank you very much. So I will go ahead and call the roll. Ms. Craybill,
Here.
Mr. Wildebohr,
Present.
I am present. My quorum is present. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wildebohr. There's a motion. Craybill, how do you vote?
Oh, you didn't ask for discussion. I need to add some things to the agenda or ask to add.
I apologize. Any discussion?
Yes, I would like to add on policy 6435, employee dress code. Would like to add policy 2330 so that we can add back in those closed sessions that we inadvertently deleted. Would also like to add 5210, distribution and display of non-school materials, which somehow got left off of our list.
What was the second one you added?
It was 2330, the board agenda. When we approved it last time and we went forward, we left off the closed session in the beginning and a closed session opportunity at the end. That it's going to take us like 30 seconds to approve that.
Okay, you've heard the amendments. Is there a second for those amendments?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say, Ms. Craybill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Wildebohr, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Now I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
There's a second. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Craybill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Wildebohr, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The agenda is approved. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Hope you all had a chance to look at those minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Oh, yes. Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Ms. Craybill. And there's a second for Mr. Wildebohr. Thank you, Mr. Wildebohr. Any discussion?
Yes, policy 5210, it showed in our minutes that we moved it along, but in my notes, we didn't move it along and we didn't talk about it at the last meeting. So I wanted to just make sure that that got shown in our minutes that we didn't move it along, or somebody tell me that like you or Pete or any of the other people that at regular attend tell us that.
Yeah, I don't remember moving that along.
Yeah, I don't either. And we got an update from Ms. Stagner, yesterday. So that just kind of confirmed that we didn't move it. So I think we should, when it says after the review and discussion of the policies 5210 through 6230, it was determined that policies, and it listed, will return to policy committee. We just need to add in there 5210.
Okay. I'm sure we can make those changes. So is there a motion to approve?
Oh, oh, never mind. Well, in the minutes also too, I'm not certain if this, I didn't see him in the minutes, but it has here at the request of board member Stephanie Craybill during the 7/13 policy committee meeting, that the following policies would be back to the policy committee. 2230 was board committees. 26, oh, you know what? That should have been done in the agenda review. I'm in the agenda approval. I'm a goob. Yeah, so that there was 4 other policies that we listed there, in there. So I didn't know how it gets to the main points, but doesn't make the minutes. Because I had lists, because it says here in
I'm
our
not really
notes,
sure.
it says in our notes from Kim Joy on page 12, that I had asked for the following policies to come back to the policy committee: 2230 board committees, 2660 board appointments to outside committees, 3620, and I don't know why I said that, but I reviewed the notes. I mean, I reviewed the tapes and I did say it. So we need to leave it in the minutes. And then policy 5015 school volunteers. So
Would you like to?
did I mess up and not put them in the right place? I'm just a little confused on the documentation this time.
Well, we can just, I think we can just wait and pass these minutes next month, if that would make you more comfortable.
We probably should, just to make sure that we know what our change. But
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Or,
Mr. Steiner, do we need a motion to do that,
or if Pete was there, if Pete can remember, then jump in, Pete.
No, I don't remember, to be honest.
That's fine. You don't need a motion. You can just not approve them. They'll come back. They can be back on the agenda next time.
Okay,
Fine.
then let's do that so I can talk with Kim a little bit about, and maybe others that were at the meeting.
Okay, moving on, the North Carolina School Board Association policy update.
Do you see where I'm talking about? Okay.
Which policy would you like to begin with? Did you want to start, Ms. Crable, with the policies that we have returning?
Yes. I suggest that we start with policy 5120 because we have Judge Corpening back with us again to answer questions that our board members have, and that we might just need to just tighten up.
That would be fine. Judge Corpening, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate your time and your service. So I'm absolutely fine with the policy as is. I know there are some board members with some questions.
So Nelson, I wanted to
So,
make a proposal to
Ms. Walker,
add
are you on the
one.
call?
Ms. Walker is on the call. I wanted to make one suggestion before we get into the conversation that may help us in some of the conversation. If you could scroll down to the very end of the policy right before we get into talking about it. I mean, right before we get into the references. Okay, so all those lines that are crossed off, and we have law enforcement, I can't even read it. Law enforcement actions and safety interventions within the school setting are outlined in the memorandum of understanding in place between the district. And I wanted to see if we could just add a line, kind of add back in that that line that we struck out that says including notifying parents where possible to before students are interrogated by law enforcement, even though it's redundant and our MOU says it. And all of these statutes that Judge Corpening referred us to last time say that. If it will help in the understanding from our community and from our parents to be redundant and put that line in, I would like that to be considered. So with that, let's just go ahead and let, Ms. Walker, put in her comments.
I was just concerned because I had been sent some statutes that talked about any kind of questioning, or let me see what the statute, interrogation procedures when it comes to juveniles, about notification of parents. And I'm worried that if we just leave it to the MOU, we as a school board aren't doing probably what we can to make sure those protections are at least voiced in this document. I know there's a lot of detail in the MOU, but I feel like this is more document that was given to us, not that we as a board have put in this particular policy. And y'all know how important policy is to what we do. So I'm just concerned about that. I feel like if we're not clear as we can be in our own policy, that it's, I'm not going to say misconstrued, but I worry that it's not in line with the law. I have the statute. If you want to look at it, you may have it. The judge may refer to it. I don't know.
Stephanie, what statute are you talking about? Just to make so I'll know that I'm listening to.
Yeah, it's a statute 7B2101, interrogation procedures, and it directly relates to juvenile in custody. And when you talk about a juvenile in custody in a school setting, I know there's some, I've sent you guys some stuff last night that the UNC School of Government had posted about what they consider custody. And when it comes to having law enforcement there, I think in a school setting, it's a little bit different in the fact that we are the custodians in a way of children. And so, and in that document that I sent you guys last night referred to the fact that, students are in a position, where they have to listen to authority, which is principals or administrators, and are they ultimately responsible for discipline of the schools. So there is this kind of gray area, I think, where when it comes to SROs being in our schools, that I just want to make sure that there are enough protections there for the juveniles, especially when it comes to questioning and not having a parent there. Did I tell you the statute 7B2101? It's interrogation procedures. And it says the juvenile has a right to remain silent. That's one of the things that they discuss in that document I sent you from UNC. That it's just, we want to make sure that the students are as protected with their rights as much as possible. Is there any additional questions I can try and answer? Obviously I'm not an expert on the law, but obviously I'm reading these statutes, and I want to make sure when we're passing this policy that we don't just say refer to the MOU.
So with the line that I suggested earlier, would that get it for you? I mean, not get it. That's not, I don't want to be flippant, but would that cover your concerns?
Well, and that's what I was hoping we would have some extra time. I know you guys have first and second and sticking us on the agenda on the 17th. I made the point of saying in an email that we have not had, usually we have a regular board meeting where we have a first reading, the next board meeting, which is the next regular meeting, the second reading. We had some really messed up meetings last month where we have like 2 weeks in between our regular meetings. And I asked that it be put on the September 3rd so we can have more time to really just hone in on what language we definitely want to put in. When I'm looking at the state statute on interrogation procedures for juveniles, especially, it clearly says that juvenile has a right to have a parent, guardian, or custodian there during questioning. But there's more to it. And I'm not suggesting that we have to cram every bit of this law in there, but I think when it comes to this policy, we have to be, since we as a school board are responsible for the students in this district, we have to at least put something in there that makes it more clear for the public, not just for having it in the document, but also language that is clear for people that are reading it that aren't experts on law or some of the terminology that's clear to what the rights are. And that's why I was hoping we could have a bit more time. We have this meeting, and then next week, you all know I'm not going to be there, and I'm not going to be able to, voice it on the day. And I wish it hadn't been added to the agenda that quickly. So I'm not sure why, we can't be clear with the language before we put it up for a full vote.
So Stephanie, is the language I added, is that sufficient or it's not good enough?
Tell me
Because that's
again,
what
please
I'm
just
sorry.
repeat it.
Oh, you go first. I'll be quiet.
No, I just said, please repeat it. I did not
Oh,
use one time.
Yes, so I was suggesting that we add back in the line that we struck, but put it in as a comma, that law enforcement actions and safety interventions within the school setting are outlined in the memorandum of understanding in place between the district and law enforcement, comma, including including notifying parents before an interrogation takes place when possible.
When
So
possible.
well,
Do you-
and we already talked about and this is something maybe Deborah and Judge Corponing can jump in, that there might be instances where we can't notify the parent because of the specific case, or because we can't get a hold of the parent. So I didn't know if that was okay, or if Judge Corponing or Deborah want to weigh in on that line, if that's appropriate. So I want you to be comfortable with the wording that we're putting in.
Well, I don't really think it's about my comfort as much as I feel like, we should be clear on the law of the state, and perhaps the line should really align with that more than just, obviously me being comfortable with the line. It's not about me being uncomfortable. I just really feel like, obviously I'm not on the policy committee, and, I would like more robust discussion about the line. It sounds okay, but at the same time, I feel like this law I'm looking at is a little more clear than that. Well, if we want legal people to weigh in on that, that would be fine too. I haven't heard anybody yet, so.
I certainly don't want to jump in but I'm happy to answer that question. The statute that you've cited, Ms. Walker, relates to the obligations of law enforcement. And this policy is about what the school district will do, what school district employees are required to do. And so to the extent that, and I'm certainly happy to hear Judge Corponing weigh in as well, but that I don't know that it's appropriate to just incorporate that statute that addresses law enforcement actions into school board policy. I certainly think that it would be fine to add back in the sentence about the principal or designee making every effort to notify the parent or guardian unless requested not to do so by law enforcement. I think that if I recall the last policy meeting, this was discussed, that Ms. Varnum suggested that because all of that is already covered in the MOU, and the MOU is a document that the board adopts as well, just like adopting policy. So, but I don't think there's a problem with having it duplicated in the policy, even though it is in the MOU.
Well, can I just talk to that point? In the MOU, we did this kind of backwards. We did this policy after, and it was almost like this line was struck because the MOU is already done. And I feel like in a way it's kind of backwards. So to the point about it being an MOU, that's it. That's the language that was given to us, and we adopted it. At the same time, obviously, there are things we can put in policy to make things more clear, I think. And I'm not, especially if you stick the whole state statute in there, but this is under Part D, criminal investigations. I feel like that's where it kind of changes a little bit from what school administrators employees do to what SROs and law enforcement do in these cases. And so I feel like this is important. It's important to put more in there, more maybe rights of kids or juveniles in there and their parents and guardians. So I mean, I haven't written the exact wording I think should go in there. And I think that's why we're having this discussion. And, I think that's why we're hopeful, if we have good time in between, we can get it right. And, I mean, like I said, it's not really about what's making me feel satisfied. It's I'm here discussing it because I feel like it's what's important ultimately for the children that are potentially going to be, interrogated in the school setting.
And again, I don't disagree that this portion of the policy addresses criminal investigations, but it addresses what school administrators and employees are going to be doing in the context of law enforcement. Law enforcement has an obligation to abide by the laws that are applicable to them, including 7B-2101. This is talking about what school officials will do in the circumstance where law enforcement needs to do any kind of investigation or questioning on school property. And so to the extent that the committee thought it was appropriate to add back in that law enforcement, that principals and designees will make an effort to notify parents, I think that would be perfectly appropriate. But that is not going to control what law enforcement does, except to the extent that the board can set out the structure of the interaction and the cooperation between those two entities.
Well, do we as a school board want to tighten this up and say, I know, what was it, what was the wording, Stephanie? It was
so that that including parents, including that principals will make every effort to notify parents before an interrogation begins. And so that was already in there. We struck it out. And that's kind of one of my things is, I always like to be a little more, more words, and every meeting I get told that I put too many words in, but that's okay because we can go back and add those words if we think that will be clear. But here's what I'm trying to get us to, and not to silence anyone. But so we are back at the policy committee, and the policy committee is where we add in the right words. And we can easily take this policy to the September meeting and not do the August the 17th meeting. But at some point we have to put in words and we have to bring it back to the full board. And so we have several board members here with us. So we've got, Pete, Nelson, me, you, Hugh, that any one of us can just, jump in right now and put in some words, because otherwise we just keep talking in circles. So we have to put in some words to start with so that we have something to take back to the whole board. And correct me if I'm wrong, Nelson, and Pete, we got to have some words to go with. So I was suggesting some words that seem to get to what your concern was. But if I'm not getting enough words, then throw out some words. That's what the policy committee is for, is to let's just hash this out and throw out the words so that we can get it back to our whole board for discussion.
May I make a recommendation, please, or have some input?
go ahead,
Sure.
Hugh.
All right, thank you. It's always been my feeling, and the many times that I went to the Institute of Government in Chapel Hill for updated school law, I've always felt that the principal is the parent, that old in loco parentis, but the principal is and must be and should act accordingly in the absence of a parent towards a child, even if you don't like that child's behavior or that they are going to get in serious trouble. I still believe that. Schools can't exist without school resource officers. They add a line of safetyness and also relationship with kids way beyond what most people realize with the students. I've known Judge Courtman for a long time, and he's done so much for students. I trust him no matter what. And I speak with a little bit of personal experience in that arena with students and the judges in town, particularly Jay. But I think that the school should make every concerted effort to contact a parent when a child is involved with the law, even in interrogation. If at all possible, they need to be notified. They need to be notified if they're going to be locked up. You can coin it and word it like you want to, but those are my professional and personal feelings with 4 decades in administration, most of it in high school. And I'd also add that you include the superintendent so that he has a pulse on his schools and a pulse on what people are doing. And if they're following or doing what it should be done based upon be it MOU and or our policy, I think the superintendent must be notified as well.
Okay, so Hugh, to that point, I just want to bring us back. In the MOU on page 4, it says, in cases where parents or guardian cannot be reached and any questioning of a student is conducted without parental notification, the school principal must be present. So it does say that unless the SRO directs otherwise for safety and investigative reasons. So it does say that it doesn't say that we must make every effort, but if we want to put a line in as a reminder, I have no problem with that. So
I just said that.
all right. So if you want to suggest some words, or do you want me to suggest words?
exactly
No.
what we did before.
I know.
Miss-
Hugh, do you want to suggest words or what?
I like the original that we've dropped.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, from what I'm hearing, what people are talking about could be accomplished by simply not deleting those first 2 sentences and leaving, you can always add a reference, leave in the reference to the MOU, but from me, listening to what everyone seems to be wanting to get at is accomplished by the 2 sentences that were already in there that were struck.
Thank you, Ms. Dagner. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I understand it may be in it is MOU, but everything we write, everything we say is misconstrued of late. And so to add it makes it much easier for the parents to see it without having to go back and look at this or look at that. And so I think that also is another rationale for putting it back in as it was. I don't think it stops anything from the SROs or the legal arena, but I think it does put the schools in a situation where they know their responsibility with regards to those students when they're in those situations.
So if I might, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Dr. Skipper, but I see that you have joined our call. And as a representative from PAPA, the Principals Association, do you have any comments that you would like to make from a current active principal's point of view?
I feel exactly like Mr. McManus. I think those first 2 lines need to go back into policy. We do act as parents in the absence of parents, and I think that will help bring the angst back down around this policy for sure.
Thank you. Okay.
And Miss Crabell and other board members, this is Julie Varnum. Can I add something in that is being discussed with law enforcement as some potential amendments to the MOU that might help?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure.
Please.
Okay, so in the section of the MOU that the policy references with regard to investigations and arrests, it's being discussed to clarify, and I've been in discussion with law enforcement yesterday and this morning, to clarify that sentence regarding the notification to be this: the SRO and the principal shall promptly notify the parents or guardian of any student suspected of criminal wrongdoing whenever an SRO conducts a custodial interrogation per North Carolina General Law 7B-2101. In addition, when the next section regarding interrogations, we're adding custodial in front of interrogations so it says all custodial interrogations will be conducted in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 7B-2101. And again, that language is appropriate to be in the MOU because the MOU is a joint document between the school board and New Hanover County Schools and law enforcement, where policy just belongs to New Hanover County Schools. So I hope that offers some clarification in that language as well.
So
Ms.
Julie,
Varnum?
oh, sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to follow up with that. You're suggesting maybe an addition to the MOU. Would we as a board, would that come back up at the next September meeting, regular meeting for reapproval?
Yes, this is in further discussion with law enforcement. And so it was signed as is last year. And then this year there weren't oh, I guess that's not my battery running low.
Okay.
There weren't suggestions until the past week or so. And so now we're in discussion on making additional clarifications, and that will come back to you as a board.
And you just mentioned that statute that I was talking about. This is state statute on interrogation procedures, correct?
And it was it's general statute 7B-2101, and that was added by our law enforcement partners.
So, okay, great. Because it does, and the reason I bring that up is because it does state on there about the juvenile's right to remain silent too, which I think was another question and dimension to this discussion is, I don't think children understand. I know everyone knows kind of what Miranda rights are, but I don't think juveniles perhaps would know that. And so putting that in there in the MOU especially would be very helpful as far as like referring to the state laws on questioning juveniles. So thank you.
So if I'm hearing us correctly, that we are going to leave in the line that we struck out, and then send that, back out at our September meeting for a policy on, I guess, are we still on first reading now? I'm kind of, Deborah, where are we on that? Are we on first reading or are we on second?
I think this was already on for first reading. So once it leaves the committee with changes, it can go at the committee's desire. I don't know that it has to go back through second reading or first reading, but it could if there's a desire for additional public input or a time for the public to view it and get it familiar with it. You could certainly send it back for another first reading.
I know a policy committee, but can I ask that be done only because it is a substantial change again? And what I was saying about our meetings last month where they were all messed up time-wise. And so we had first reading really late, even though our meeting was July 20th. It was only 2 weeks in between the August meeting. And I get it. I just feel like if we're sticking with our patterns on doing first and second readings at regular meetings, that's why I was kind of hoping we could wait till September. But that's just my desire. I mean, it's up to you guys.
The only caveat I would have is if it's not adopted, it's still not in force. It's not in place. I know there's the MOU in place, so it may not be that much of a concern, but I would certainly want to hear from the administration about whether there's a concern about not having this policy in place.
So could
Ms.
we?
Barr and Dr. Faust, could you speak to that, please?
My question would be, if the policy is in limbo, do we go back to our old policy? How does that work with not having a policy, but having an MOU?
As long as this policy is not adopted, any current policies would control but the MOU would also be the document that would be referenced because it has been adopted by the board.
And if anybody's interested, the policy that it would be replacing is policy 8320. That's the old policy. You can find that, I'm just looking, I don't have these all committed to memory. I just am looking at the correlation table that McKenna gave us. So that policy is still in effect. So can I make this? Oh, sorry.
Just, of course, reading, almost committing this policy to memory after seeing it so much. What else is needed for this policy?
Well, I was just thinking, like to keep in order what we normally do on regular meetings is to, give that a couple extra weeks because, when we talk about policy and what we do as a governance team, input is important. I think these are good changes. I really do. I feel like the MOU is in existence and there are going to be changes to that, we're being told. So to add in the wording on the state statute, which I think will be helpful. That can be done at the August 17th meeting.
Because so what I'm trying to understand is, so when we put it back in, and I'm assuming that's what we're stating, is that when law enforcement officials find it necessary to question students on campus or take them into custody, the principal or designee shall make an effort to notify the parent or guardian of the student unless requested not to do so by law enforcement officials. If the student is taken into custody of law enforcement officials, the superintendent's office must be notified. Then, of course, it says law enforcement actions and safety interventions within the school setting are outlined in the memorandum of understanding in place between the district and law enforcement. So was it the beginning when individuals didn't think that parents would be notified?
That's what I'm getting. And also there were questions about the, not having language in there about the statute on interrogations, which Ms. Varnum has already kind of addressed when it's going to be added to the MOU, which it currently isn't yet. I think these are good changes, but like I said to you, I feel like I'm not an expert, and that's why we give a little bit of time. I mean, my understanding of policy is that's why we give time, those times in between for any, suggestions, changes, or recommendations for the next meeting. Next week is the meeting, and it can be done. But like I said, it was in first reading for a couple weeks. I think everybody's schedule is just all changed. Are you opposed to maybe like a couple more weeks for this particular policy, especially if the MOU gets readopted on the 17th?
No, Stephanie, that's what I was bringing up, is that why don't we just put this on for on our September meeting as policy for second reading, just like we always do. So let's just pretend that this is the first time we've ever discussed it, and these are what we want to put in. So this is me just spitballing. We put it on in September and we vote on the policy at that point in time. We can get it posted, in Assembly, these changes as soon as Kim gets that tightened up for us. And then we can also have on the agenda the MOUs, and those MOUs usually occur before the second reading policies are discussed. So it will go in a more natural order than we did last time when we kind of got the cart before the horse. So that's what I would like to propose to our policy committee.
Yeah, I would like to see this on for second reading. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there already.
Well, I don't know if it's misinformation. I think that
As
now we've
mentioned,
cleared it up and we've made it more what we want, and let's just move forward and do it in September. Like, oh, I see your hand. Sorry, I'll be quiet, Dr. Faust.
I have a clarifying question. Just for helping me understand, so in the past, were students interrogated without parents knowing, or principals not sharing information? I'm trying to find the rub. What was the rub?
I think the rub is that we took out the line that said principals will contact parents, when we were never going to not contact parents, but by taking it out, it implies that now we're not. And so I think by adding it back in, then it covers a lot of ground. And then we'll refer to the MOU, and the MOU will be a little more descriptive as well. So we'll be more in sync. That's what I'm feeling like.
Ms. Varnum, did you have something to add?
Yes, in discussion with law enforcement, the sheriff would like for the MOU to be amended as quickly as possible so he can go ahead and sign. And so I'm going to plan to put that onto the agenda for next Tuesday.
Yeah, I would agree. That's why I was thinking maybe we could do that first, and then, like Ms. Crable suggested, that the second is when the policy comes up for second reading. I think that's appropriate. I mean, because we already signed the MOU, it's in effect, but amendments to it would make it more clear and more strong for parents and for the whole process.
That sounds like a good idea to me. I think let's go ahead and follow that timeline.
Yeah, I think we should go ahead and, we've discussed this now for 40 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and call the question. I want to know, is there a motion to put this on for September meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Crable, how do you vote?
Well, no, let me be clear on my own motion. This is going on for second reading in September. Is that the motion I made?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I'm good. Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Policy 5120 will be returned to the full board in September for second.
Thank you.
Okay, policy, our next policy for discussion is policy 2330 or 2230, I'm sorry, board committees.
Yeah, I am going to I want to hold off on that because we just had a work session on that, which we really didn't get very far, but I think that we are going to, I would like to suggest, at some point that we have another work session on that, but that's outside of our purview. But if we look down at, this is going to come up again, policy 6140, student wellness. It's the SHAC requires that we have a board member on it, and yet our policy on board committees doesn't say that. So I don't know if we want to just discuss it or we want to table it or come back to it. That's what I wanted on that one. And then they also too wanted to address the fact that that Dr. Skipper has been asked to be a regular contributing member of our policy committee. And I just wanted to make sure that that was okay with, and she's as a representative Papa. And so wanted to make sure that that was okay with us if we needed to do a policy change to write that in. That was one of the things I brought up last time, about adding a principal, to this committee. And I got kind of like a little bit of pushback and said, let's discuss it later. So that's what that policy was all about.
Stephanie, wouldn't go to Stephanie Adams to add a person to that chat committee? Isn't that her responsibility?
Well, it is, but we haven't even gotten there to that policy. I mean, we should have been doing it all along, but we haven't. So now is our opportunity to do that. And when we talk about the board, committees appointments, then Stephanie Adams can do that.
Right.
I just wanted to like make it a circle and a action step. So I don't know if this is the right time to talk
So what
about it.
language would you like to add?
Well, I don't know if we want to necessarily add it right this minute, or if we want to just hold off on the discussion and have another work session, because we really didn't get very far on our work session at all. So I'm okay with holding off on it, but as soon as we get 6140 approved, then we're going to have to come back and look at it anyway. But then also my other point was that making sure that our board, that our policy committee will recognize the representative from Papa as an active voice on our committee. Not a voting voice, but an active speaking voice.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I have no problem with that. I don't.
And just so I'm clear, Ms. Craybill, the policy currently says that the committee is made up of 3 board members, and you're not asking to change that to make someone else a member of the board just to have, because the committee can allow, and it says to be assisted by staff, but the committee can invite anyone to come and speak or allow anyone to speak. The chair has certainly complete authority to allow that. So are you anticipating a change to the policy?
No.
Okay.
I wasn't anticipating a change to the policy. I just wanted it to be clear that that Dr. Skipper, in her role as from Papa, was given the approval to be a speaking member, because not anybody can just get on this call. They have to listen through YouTube and then provide comments to us. I just wanted to know how we address that so that that it's officially allowed to talk.
Yeah, I think that's just a decision the committee makes on who. It says is assisted by administrative staff at the direction of the superintendent or designee, but the committee chair can invite, and the committee can request anyone to be here to give input.
Okay, so do I need to make a motion to allow a representative from Papa to be at our meetings, each month?
No.
I don't know that.
I don't think you need a motion.
I don't think you need a motion.
Okay. That's all. I just wanted to be clear because I didn't want people to wonder, why Dr. Skipper got to say something and no other principal, did. Does or
Okay,
whatever.
so let's go ahead and hold off on further discussion of 2230 until we have another work session.
Yes, that would be fine with me.
Outstanding.
Policy I have for discussion is policy 3620. I know, Stephanie, you said you wanted it back. Do you
I
have
don't
anything?
know what in the heck happened there. I read the minutes and went, what in the heck? I didn't say that. So I went back and watched myself and yeah, I said it, but I didn't have any reason behind it. So I thought I took that off of the agenda. So I have, unless anybody remembers us talking about that, the only thing that I could think of that why I might have brought that up is that I saw a student at a protein shop who was wearing a shirt that had a school name on it with a club that was not approved. So I was thinking maybe that's what I was thinking, but because this talks about clubs, but then I don't think the timeline was. So I don't know what I was doing. So
I
let's
think I remember. It's Mary Hazel.
Oh, thank you, Mary Hazel.
If you go back up to the top of the page, let's see, the right in that third paragraph of section A, it talks about all fines and fees owed by the student to the school system or school must be paid before the school may participate in extracurricular activities. So this came up in relation to a change I made to another policy, that this had already been approved, but in the other policy, we weren't going to restrict participation. So we had asked that question.
Okay. All right. So my question's covered. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thanks for having a good memory, Mary Hazel. Why we pay you the big bucks.
So is that sentence going to be struck by the committee
Oh, that one?
from this policy?
Do we need to?
If the policies are inconsistent, and I don't have the other one right in front of me, but if policies are inconsistent and the reason this was brought back was to address that, since I'm trying to keep up with the changes here, do you want to take out that sentence, all fines and fees owed by the student?
Mary Hazel, is that what you're,
Well, we brought it up just because of inconsistency. I think principals certainly are going to want to leave this in from how, this really helps them collect. But right now they have a little bit of flexibility with that next line about school administrators choosing to exercise this authority to restrict participation. So it's a little bit unusual for policy language, but it gives them a little flexibility in certain situations to still allow participation. We just wanted to bring this up to make sure we were consistent on, like Deborah, I don't remember what the other policy was you were changing, but it said the opposite. And we can research that real quick, but I just want them to be consistent one way or the other.
Yeah, I agree. I was smart to bring that back up. No, no, yeah, I agree that we need to just figure out which one that was. Was it one we're talking about today, do you think, Mary Hazel?
Possibly, I'll be glad to look
Collections
through.
and solicitations, policy 5220. No, that's different. Well, that's collections. That could be the policy that we're talking about. That Deborah, she did up.
I think it might be one that was already approved, but let me look. Y'all can keep going and come back to this if you want while I research it.
Okay.
Do we want to come back to it when Ms. Hazel
Yes.
finds something? Okay, great. I'm going to put this one on pause. Our next policy for discussion is policy 4700, student records. Ms. Varnum.
We had to step away from her spot for just a minute. And so I can take a look at it. Let me give her a quick call while we're here.
So Nelson,
Yeah, Josh, that's no big deal. Just come back to this one too.
you skipped over policy 2660. Didn't I add that one?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't have 2660 in mind. Let's discuss 2660, board appointments to outside committees.
Yeah, so that's a two-pronger. One, it goes back to board committees, policy 2230. But in having the right committees. But the part that I wanted to talk about while it was still fresh in our mind was section B, number 2, where we talked about Cape Fear Community College Board of Trustees. The we had a little bit of discussion about how to vote at the meeting where we interviewed the candidates. And so our policy just says the board will vote. And if you look at the policy 2342, when it talks about how to vote, it says it should be a voice vote, usually a show of hands or a written ballot. So we had to come to some consensus before we even started the deliberation on the candidates about how we were going to vote. And it turned out that we ended up using a ranking rubric to do that. So I just wanted to make sure that I wanted to ask that the policy committee, if that is something that we wanted to suggest a change for the whole board to look at, that we use, that's the voting mechanism that we use, just to ensure that all candidates get the equal opportunity to be discussed. Because if you make a motion that says, hey, I want, Stephanie Craybill to be the board of trustee person, and we vote yes or no, we don't have a chance to, we'd have to keep going down like everybody's, making a motion on each person. So that's what I wanted to discuss on that. And Nelson, you weren't there, but I'm sure you can weigh in on rankings, but Pete was there and he was the one who actually made the suggestion that got us to that. And we turned them in. So all of our votes are still public. If anybody wants to look at them, we just didn't, do a whole lot of deliberating out loud.
Yeah, and I think it should be, clear and, concise and follow the same thing. I don't think it should be, something different each time.
Right. Yeah, because Chair Adams said, well, we're just going to follow our board policy to vote, but the board policy on voting is not clear.
Yeah, I think putting in
Yeah, I have
time.
no problem adding language that stipulates that we will vote with a ranking rubric. I think it's good. I agree that it's problematic when we don't really get a chance to discuss all the candidates.
So
if you have
some of
four
the words
people
that
who
I
want one
that I
candidate,
thought,
and that's it. So I agree.
So I don't know where we would put this. Maybe Deborah can help us. Because I thought to ensure that all candidates get equal discussion, the board will rank the candidates and select the candidate with the most number 1 rankings. Just so that this last time we did rank everybody 1 through 5, and then we added up the numbers. Sometimes I feel like maybe some people will, I don't want to say lowball, but the numbers might not be as accurate. So if we all put down who we wanted, and then maybe a number 2, or something along those lines. But that would be something I guess our whole board would have to discuss. But that's my first crack at the language where it says the board will vote to appoint applicants, and then stick that line right in there.
Yeah, if you just use the term somewhere, ranked choice voting, I think that would clear everything up.
So ranked choice voting is where if someone doesn't come up with a clear majority of the votes, then the last candidate drops off, and the votes for that are redistributed according to the person's second choice. It's a little bit of a complicated method. I don't know that you and I'm not sure what how you did it the last time, your ranking. Usually voting by written ballot is that everyone's name is listed and everyone selects their first choice, signs the ballot. The ballots are then read out. And if there is a majority, then that person is selected. If not, everyone votes a second time. And again, the ballots have to be signed and maintained as public records. So that would be my suggestion, that you could do this consistent with your existing policy and say that the votes will be made by written ballot in accordance with, policy 24, 23, whatever the number is. If you want to have an opportunity to discuss the candidates, there's certainly no reason you can't discuss the candidates before you vote.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know that they're mutually exclusive.
Well, here's what one of the things was that we had a question about was, obviously we have to vote in public, but can we deliberate in a closed session so that we don't have to say anything,
No.
about
No.
a community member?
No, there's no provision of the open meetings law that allows you to deliberate in closed session unless it's an employee. So this person would not qualify, and there's no ability to do that. If they've put themselves out to be a nominee, then they will be discussed in open.
Okay. So do you want to pick out the right word for it, Deborah, to put in there, and then you can send it to Kim and we can move that forward?
Sure.
Is that okay with you, Nelson and Pete?
That's fine with me.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a whole year, but I just wanted to do it while it was fresh in our mind.
Okay, so moving on, I'm going to wait on policy 4700 until Ms. Varnum returns. Policy 5015, school volunteers. I'm not sure who from administration would be best to lead us off there.
No, I did. So we were talking there, we did a lot of words added to this after our discussion. So I had a couple questions about what we added in the section A, the second paragraph. I just wanted to be clear when it says an incidental adult visitor is an adult who visits the school upon invitation of an employee of the school or school system for a specific purpose, like speaking to a class. So there are often times that a parent support organization, a PTA, a PTO, a booster club invites a member from the community to come talk supplies a person to come and talk. So do you think that would just fall under getting permission from the principal to be the inviter? I just want to be clear because that happens, a lot.
Ms. Kribel, I think that the person who does the inviting or does the final approval would be an employee of the school. So certainly that does not limit them from working with a parent support organization to get that individual, but the ultimate final decision would be made by an employee of the school district.
Okay, so that would probably be something that's good for here, but we might need to roll that over into when we do our volunteer training to make sure that like parent support organizations or the meeting that we have, and Nancy Braswell can tell me what the policy is or the requirement when we have the parent support organizations at the high schools, have to all meet together to talk about that. So I just want to make sure that was clear. And then in section B, where we added in a line that says the superintendent or designee shall set criteria for school volunteers to be subject to a criminal background check for which the volunteer may be required to pay. And we had, extensive conversation about what about if they can't pay? So do we want to have a line in there that says, Mr. Smith, addressed this at the board meeting last time, that scholarships and partnerships are available. Do we want to put that as part of this policy as well?
I would not, because we already say may, and I think,
No, the thing is, we can't say may, because may be required to pay, because we know if you're a level 1, you don't have to pay, but if you're a level 2, you do have to pay. And what about if a person wants to be a level 2 but can't pay? It's $20. So is Mr. Smith still on with us?
I am, Ms. Craybill. I would submit that until we get a established and codified foundation or scholarship fund. I'd be hesitant to put into policy that there are other options when in fact they haven't been solidified yet. So I think that I've been told at least parent teacher organizations or PTAs have in the past supplemented that $20 fee where applicable. And I know that's, again, as I said, not across the board. But I would defer to the policy experts. I would just submit, I think that we have some good optionality there to incorporate programs to help folks out. But until it's established, to put it in policy, I'd just advise caution.
Okay, and so my only point about that, Mr. Smith, was PTAs will help, and I'm really talking about the schools that don't even have a PTA, and that they don't have the financial means, so they don't have a way to get there. So I'm willing to come back and revisit that as soon as we get going, but just to know that we may be disadvantaging some members of our community that want to volunteer and who may be very capable and qualified.
Absolutely.
So, one suggestion would be to, you could take that last line off, and then it would just be information that would be provided in the criteria when someone comes to a school to volunteer. They're provided the information about what they need to do. If there's a charge, then they could be given information about any assistance at that time. Or, so again, just take off following the comma, delete that, and leave it up to the criteria or the procedures that the superintendent puts in place. The other option would be to leave that phrase in and add language. Individuals who want to volunteer but are unable to pay should inquire with the principal about other options, or something very general that would allow for future implementation of a more formal scholarship.
I would definitely like to see that, because I don't want to not put in lines about a criminal background check, because we definitely want to require that. But I don't want them to just be put off that or be thinking, oh, I may be required, so yeah, whatever wording you think that gets it to my point, I'm okay with. So if Mr. Smith, if you've got any points or.
Ms. Steiner, I would prefer language, the latter language you used, just about saying, people can inquire with their school principal about making other arrangements or other accommodations. I think that would be best.
And we may have, I think usually there's some kind of language in policies that have to do with student fees, that if the fee will be a hardship, it may be waived or something like that. So I'll look and I'll come up with some language to add in there. Be glad to do that.
So will you send that to us in enough time to take this to move it forward at the September meeting?
I should be able to do that. I'll try to do it while it's fresh in my mind, and I'll send it around to the committee members.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then, so the only other thing that I just want to bring up is it's in section B, number 3, the requirement that volunteers comply with the the applicable dress code and appearance of standards under policy 7340. So we're referencing a policy that we don't have, that we haven't approved, and that sort of got us in a little bit of trouble with the 5120. But 6435 is one of the policies that I wanted to talk about today, the employee dress code. So that might be a moot point at this. I'm just having such a hard time referencing, putting in policies that we haven't approved.
Okay, well, are we good with 5015 as amended, with the amended language?
No, because I wanted to ask, I'm asking a question about sentence number 3 about the employee dress code.
If that's going to go forward today as well, if they'll go forward together, we could certainly make that reference change so that it references the policy that will be adopted. Now, if the policy is not adopted, it might be problematic, but we can certainly do that, assuming they'll go up together and be adopted at the same time.
Well, we don't have the recommended language on 7340 yet. That wasn't, asked for. So I just wanted to make a one-liner change in 6435 for now. So I guess
I know, Ms. Crable, you always, I understand the concern about that, absolutely. We do have the correlation table, which is a little cumbersome, I grant it. One option might be it's not telling everyone exactly where the policy is, but you could say the requirement that volunteers comply with applicable dress and appearance standards as established for employees, and just leave it, there without citing the specific policy name.
I would be much more comfortable with that if the rest of the committee agrees.
That's fine.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Those are my only comments for school bond 5015.
Okay, 5015 will be on for first reading at the September board meeting. Ms. Varnum, I see you have rejoined us. We were about to discuss policy 4700, student records.
Yes, and I'm desperately looking for my document that I had ready. I do have it. Sorry, I've just been in multiple places at once, and I let Dr. Faust know that being in multiple places at once is certainly possible. It's just not graceful. I heard you guys call on me a few minutes ago, and I was ready, but I hit the wrong button because I was in the car. So basically with 4700, while I'm looking for my resource, we needed to bring that policy back because we made a small adjustment in the relationship between the documents in our technology packet, which include the image release, and then also FERPA directory information. And so, Deborah, I don't know if you had another way that you wanted to explain that, but we wanted to make sure that they were, those two approaches aligned but referenced each other.
All right. Can you point me to the, are we on? Okay. I didn't have that policy up either. So are we on, is the policy is
4700.
Right, which section, I guess? I'm trying to find the section. Because right now what is showing on the screen is about amending records, which I don't think is what you were talking about.
No, it's in the FERPA directory information. Right here where we are, we've got the recommendation to move the photograph and digital image. But then in B, if we can scroll just a little bit, Additionally, information that's designated a directory as directory, we add in those pieces regarding the what we had updated last year when we had students in remote learning, and we might have recordings of that
Right.
remote learning. And so we've also got the piece here about the pictorial or photograph or pictorial representation, and the statement at the bottom, opting out of disclosures of this directory information may also limit the extent to which students will be able to participate in virtual or online classes. So this is just that realignment to the technology packet. I don't know if Ms. Brinson is on and wants to add in the piece. We just needed to cross-reference those and align them.
Thank you, Ms. Varner. Ms. Brinson, do you have anything to add?
I don't believe so, because we have because we have it in a separate. Yep, no, this is good.
So, Julie, I'm sorry, is there language that you wanted to add to this? If you could repeat that.
No, this is the draft. This is the draft. I believe that came back. from me.
Okay, so it's just
Deborah?
because I pulled up my version of it and it's dated June 6th. So I was just wondering if I missed something. We're just now getting back to it. That's it?
Yes, it's just
Okay.
now getting back on. Yes,
Okay. No, that's right. We worked on this one.
yes.
I appreciate the changes. I'm certainly ready to move it forward for first reading, if that is the will.
Yeah, I just have one question about that, about the, when we're talking about all the different kinds of files and records that a student has, the cumulative records, the discipline records, the students' disabilities, social services, juvenile records, are they all kept together in one big file, or could a student have like 5 files?
That's a great question. So it depends. We have a student records manual that details what goes in certain modules. And so they're not exactly in the same record per se, but there's reference to the other records. So every student has a module one, which includes what all students have, such as the birth certificate information. And we have a list of what things go in there and what things stay for a certain amount of time and which things move out. And then, and usually like test scores and home language survey, things like that are in the mod one that everybody has. The health screens, the health immunization report. And then some students have a module 2, and the module 2 is that additional confidential information related to either a disability or a diagnosis that warrants the 504, and a 504 plan is there. And then also students that have a disability under IDEA, they have their IEP in that module 2. And then some students, not all, have a module 3. And that module 3 would include any information that comes from law enforcement or DSS that is basically, they have different layers of confidentiality and protection. And so staff that teach a student can all access the module 1. Some staff can access a module 2, and staff don't generally access the module 3. That's just for administration. And so generally the module 1 and module 2 are kept in the same location, but not in the same cabinets.
Okay, that's helpful. I just was hoping that we had a way to connect them so that we didn't ever lose a student's information, passing around, oh, I forgot to send all 3 files, but I have one. Okay, thank you. That's real helpful.
Okay, so policy 4700 will go on for first reading. Ms. Craybill, I apologize. I forgot your other 2 policies that you wanted to discuss. Do you want to knock those out real?
Yeah, let's do 6435. If Kim could pull that up. I gave her some suggested wording. After, and I think I am paraphrasing Dr. Faust because I asked him, could he support this before I brought it up so that we didn't, have to argue about it. But it was in, scroll down. get to, keep going. Okay, so where it says stop, okay, where it says denim jeans, let's see, let me see if I can find the words real quick that I used. Did you, yeah, because I don't see that she added in there, so hold on one sec. Let me get what I suggested to Kim. Okay, so in there, I'm suggesting that we have the under denim jeans, no, under in paragraph, the 5th paragraph, 2nd sentence. Can we, oh crap. Sorry, now I can't see you guys. Oh, there you are. In the 5th paragraph, 2nd sentence, where it says that the school-based personnel will follow this policy on all days students are in attendance. Principals may designate 1 day per month with reasonable modifications to this policy may be made. And I wrote in there, I'm suggesting, now I can't even find it. That we add in such as school spirit days, so that, teachers clearly have an opportunity to wear their school wear, or perhaps their college wear. And then under the in paragraph 8, under the bullet denim jeans, where it says denim jeans are not allowed except as allowed on designated jeans days. So, Dr. Faust, I wasn't
I think that's fine. I just think
I wasn't clear if he had agreed to once a week or once a month. But I'm just thinking that this is such a win. It's such an easy win, no costs, no real procedural things, for our staff to just, be comfortable, or to, yeah. So Dr. Faust, you weigh in.
Yes, so what we were talking about is Wednesdays designating that for college day, so college t-shirt, college sweatshirt, whatever, and jeans. And then on Fridays, making it spirit days. So whatever their spirit, their school, wearing their shirt with jeans. So I don't know where that needs to go, how that's articulated, but it was once a week.
Okay.
We're designated on Wednesdays and Fridays.
Okay, that's what I wanted to just be clear, because I think everybody loved it. And Dr. Skipper, if you want to weigh in, then we would love to hear principals loving this or not loving this before we do it.
Yeah, I definitely think that the twice a week was what we had last week. I think it would be great to stick with that. I know our teachers are back in the building today, so I'm sure they're anxious to hear about it.
I absolutely think it's a win for everybody. Brought the morale way up.
Yay. Okay. So then we just need to figure out how to write it. Does it need to have like its own separate paragraph, like when back up there in that 2nd paragraph where we just say it, and then denim jeans except as denoted on jeans day? I don't know what's the best way to say it, Dr. Faust? What do you want to say?
I don't know how to write it, only other than we will recognize Wednesdays as college day.
Okay.
And in their college paraphernalia and jeans, in addition to Friday being recognized as spirit wear, your New Hanover County school spirit shirt and jeans.
Okay.
Do we need to address anything? Because down here it says t-shirts or athletic wear can only be worn by physical education teachers. Otherwise, it's not allowed. So does that or is that something that you're allowing on the Wednesdays and Fridays as far as a spirit wear top? So do we need to put anything clarification on that?
If I might, it sounds like that we might need to separate out that section for the special days, just because there are so many other references that it might conflict with. And I am happy to take a stab at that and send some language around after hearing what I think I understand. Wednesdays for college day, Fridays for spirit wear, and both of those would allow jeans to be worn on those days. Okay. It might make sense to pull that out as a separate standalone, and then we could say, except as allowed in provision B, or whatever, these things are not allowed, just so it's more clear and not conflicting.
Yeah, that's fine with me. However we have to word it. I just wanted to get
Yeah,
it in.
Ms. Stagner, if you could, is there any way we could have that by next Tuesday?
Yeah, I'll put that right on my list behind the other one and get that to you.
Yeah, because that would be nice to vote on the approve before school starts.
Agreed.
Well, for traditional schools, we've already got our other folk. There's a lot of folks already out there in school, so this will just be a nice little bonus for them. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and did you want to discuss 2330?
Yes, Kim, can you pull that one up for us? Oh, yeah. Okay, so in that policy, oh, she's getting it, sorry. Okay, so what we did by accident after we approved adding in the work session is we forgot to put in closed session. So I'm suggesting that after the approval of the agenda, we add in closed session so that we have the opportunity to go into closed session to hear what we need to hear. And then also to add in after announcements at the very end, scroll it on down, please. After announcements, to add in closed session, so that if we need to go and finish any business or something else comes up, that we don't want to, hold up everybody who's sitting in there.
Ms. Crable, and Kim, if you could scroll back up to the top of that section, there is already, I had a conversation with Ms. Adams about this. If you look at the main sentence right under the bold language, closed sessions may be added in the appropriate place when needed. So I don't know, certainly you can add it into that list, but it's not strictly necessary because you already have the option under the policy to put in a closed session whenever is required. And I certainly think it would be wise to add at the end of the agenda for every meeting an additional closed session if needed, just so that if the first hour runs long, you can go back in.
Well, Pete and Nelson, what do you think? Do you want to add them in as part of our list so that because I don't want anybody, I don't want anybody to think that we're not doing it or that we don't inadvertently, leave it off. So I can go with that.
I don't feel like we need to add it. We post the agenda ahead of time and people see it on Thursday and it'll always be there. So I really don't think we need to change it.
I was going to say, putting it in the beginning, because we always have it, might be good to have it there. And then, leaving that line in for a second one if we need it.
Yeah, I just like it to be easy to find. Not everybody's going to read all those lines. They're going to see the following format is to be used, and then they're going to skip the rest. and then, so, but if you look down, you can see real clearly where we're going to talk about it. So in case you're planning your, when I'm going to tune in, I'm not tuning in till after the first closed session, then at least, people aren't guessing as to when we're going to have this closed session.
Right. I think it'd be good to put at least the first one in, like I said.
Then I might just suggest adding additional closed sessions may be added if in the appropriate place when needed.
Okay, I'm
if
good
you're-
with that. So then Deborah, if we are going to add a closed session, another one at the end, do we have to come back and amend the agenda at some point to say we're adding it in?
Well, that's why my suggestion would be that you just have it on the agenda every meeting and just put if needed. And if you don't need it, you don't go in. And that way you don't have to amend the agenda at every meeting.
Okay, so let's just, so hearing that, I would say definitely let's put them in the places that we think we want them. And then we put if needed after them. Pete?
Okay, so are we good with policy 2330 with the suggested amendments?
Yeah, so can we
Yes.
do that one on Tuesday also?
I'll get that. I'll get that. I'm making a list.
Okay. I know these are all like little easy ones, but then the easy ones start to all add up to be like a lot of work. So thank you, Deborah.
Okay, moving on to policy 5070, public records retention, release, and dispositions. Who is here to take us through that one?
Mr. Boyer, I can talk through it. I believe this came up for second reading and then was put back in policy to discuss specifically paragraph D and the addition of potential charge for extensive research to produce public records.
That was me, by the way, Stephanie Walker.
So I went back just to start the conversation. I went back and listened to the policy committee where we discussed this, and where Ms. Stagner was talking to us about in her research what some other districts across the state had put in, and so that is where we made some of those additional changes. One of them, under section A, no, it wasn't. It was B number 1F, where we said acknowledging public record requests, we were either going to get them in 3 days or we're going to say that we can't get them in 3 days, but here's what our plan is, just to acknowledge that happened. So that's where that one came in. And then the other, the fee structure, the whole section D was done from Ms. Stagner's research and her experience with working with other counties. So not to prohibit, not to prohibit people from asking for records, but to acknowledge that it's gonna take us a little more than we thought. Like the words that we used back on June 8th were extraordinary use of district time and resources. And and just to make sure people know that we're not charging for the attorney time, even though that does take a lot of time to redact. So that's where some of that language came from.
And I can talk through briefly just our current practices for managing public records requests. We obviously, so we are in compliance with, we've already exercised what we put into, or what is put into item F there. We do acknowledge all requests within 3 days. It's almost immediate. And then we maintain a spreadsheet of time received, what the request is, the specifics, how long we've been working on it, et cetera, and then ultimately what the answer is. And so we're already complying there. With regard to the policy itself and the incorporation of potential fees, it is, and from my understanding, in line with North Carolina public record law. And as you say, I don't read that as an opportunity to dissuade public records requests. But as our team is, the communications division is helming this effort, we are looking at, Ms. Stagner, and she can speak to this, but she said 12% of the legal expenses from April 2020 to March 2021 went to assisting our division in some of these efforts, and that equates to upwards of $22,000. So we're looking at additional software solutions and ways to lessen the cumbersome nature of these things, and to include what the policy states, the proposed policy here, which is making these folks aware of any potential charges or given the option to narrow the scope of the request. So, you know, we have right now, we have this year approximately 55. I think it's probably gone up to 60. I don't have it in front of me. Requests. Some of the local and regional media use the PRR system, obviously, to request information, and that's fine. But 4 or 5 requests specifically amount to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of emails. And so that's where we are very interested in opportunities to either narrow the scope or ways to make this process more efficient to, again, answer these questions and be in compliance with the law.
I have a question. So to your point about, we brought up attorney fees, but I know that's not considered part of the cost involved. It says also in the policy, but you spoke about efficiency over, I guess, charging. If you had a more efficient system, you wouldn't have to charge as much. And I think my question was reasonable fees. And I guess I would like to know if, I know this policy hasn't been adopted yet, but has there been any kind of idea what it would cost? And if that is considered reasonable to pass on to the public? I know I've been told, and I'm not an expert here, but I've been told that the public does have a right to request public records. And I know there's redaction involved, but I don't know what the cutoff is. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, if there's a big request, you're going to be able to put it into the system. You're going to be able to put out a fee, what you've called reasonable fee on here. And I guess my question is, what is considered a reasonable fee? I know it does outline labor costs, et cetera, but I guess I worry that it says reasonable. It's just not as clear as it could be, whether or not it'd be better to eventually put a fee schedule. I don't know. I'm just trying to, I'm looking at it and I'm just worried that it does actually look like it's trying to deter the public from requesting records.
Yes,
Ms. Walker, I'd be glad to address that. I certainly agree, and I have recommended that the communications department track the time that they are spending on these types of requests, so that there can be an estimate of what what the costs are. But ultimately, the board would need to approve a fee schedule to go along with this. So if it's a certain hourly rate of the cost of what the cost is for the actual labor cost, and that needs to be presented and adopted so the public is aware. The 4 hours, it could be, you could have 1 hour, you could have 6 hours. This is some language that was adopted by another school board that I'm familiar with that has just selected 4 hours, but certainly that's a decision that that the board can make in policy. And you're also right that the cost for going through and redacting information is not recoverable under North Carolina law. The cost of determining what records are responsive by your employees within the district is. And part of the, I think, impetus for this is to make sure that people are getting the information that they're requesting in a reasonable amount of time. Because they are absolutely entitled to make public records requests. It's just that sometimes they're so large, it's difficult to get them back and turned around in a timely way.
So I'm hearing it's like time versus reasonable costs. And I guess, there's always, well, the danger that people will just give them to you in smaller amounts, but still give them, like if somebody wants X amount of records, they might just do it in smaller amount. I guess to your point, I would love to hear from Josh what he thinks about it, because he did bring up efficiency, which I think is a good conversation to have. If there's any way to make the system more efficient, perhaps costs won't be as bad.
So I'll address that, Josh. What is happening is we have some individuals who have requested over 1 million emails. So the system has to go through, and the system are people. They have to go through all of those emails, redact, make sure. So the people here on our side, we don't have a large enough system of people to pull 1 million emails and go through. So of course, then we have Darrington Smith helping us redact those. It would take a full-time position for someone to sit there and do all of those positions. What Josh is talking about is a system that they actually use in Charlotte Mecklenburg. If you go to their website, you'll see where the individuals go in and they request the open records, and it's just out there. Our biggest problem is that the manpower that it takes with all of the requests that we're getting, because the requests are not, can we pull the last week's minutes? It's pulling emails from 2012 to 2021. And when you're doing that, it ties down the technology system, it ties down the communication system, it ties down the attorneys. And so then it says getting it back in within reason. So of course it has to be subjective because we have so many people that are working on it. We just have to keep reminding them we're working on this. And so when we're getting those emails and saying, well, you're not answering our request, you're stalling. There's no way for us to get 1 million emails back to you in 3 days. It's just impossible. So that's where it's talking about how many hours it would take. If we were to say 3 hours or 3 days, it would take multiple hours for us to get those emails back to you. And I don't know if we'd be able to get 1 million emails back within three days because of all of the information that has to be read. So someone has to read 1 million pages of emails.
Well, and that speaks to, I guess, what Josh was talking about in making it more efficient. Is there a system that could make it more efficient where you wouldn't have as many manpowers to do it? I think,
No.
I guess, well.
So the system, sorry. So the system that he's talking about just actually puts it out there so that we can keep record and actually so everyone can see, hey, someone's already asked for this, so I can click on that one and then they can pull it. It's already there for them. That would be the efficiency. But there's still someone has to go out and get the information, go on the backside of it to make it presentable for the individuals to have the information.
So I know I'm probably in the weeds here on this question on redaction. Is there a certain like time limit where you don't do redaction, Ms. Dagny?
No, so part of the issue is that, you know, people use email a lot. And so if there's a request for emails, people may have written information about students or about teachers, about closed session items in emails. And so those would get pulled up into the search. If you're asking for all emails of board members back to 2012, you're going to get information about employees and about students in there. And so we have to protect that forever. Personnel information and student information does not have an expiration date on when it's no longer confidential. You know, this can be handled in a lot of ways. It doesn't require an attorney or a paralegal to go through and look at everything. But as Dr. Faust said, your staff does not have the manpower to or the technology to look through all of those. We get them, and frankly, our office is becoming overwhelmed by reviewing all of these as well. So we're getting them turned around as quickly as we can. You know, there are two steps. The first step is to identify those records that are responsive to the request, and that is, you know, looking at the time frame, looking at the keywords, looking at the to from. The next step is to go through the emails that are pulled from that search and go through and see, are there any personnel or student records in there, any attorney-client communications, any other information that might be privileged or confidential, and pulling those documents out or redacting them if it is commingled with non-confidential information. My firm has software that we can load all of those records into, and it helps because you can run searches within that initial email pull. Certainly that's something that New Hanover County Schools if you purchase the software and trained people to do those reviews, and we can certainly do that training, you could do that on your own without having them sent to our office, but it's still going to incur a cost and still going to require individuals there to put eyes on every single page to make sure that you're not violating FERPA or violating North Carolina statutes about employee confidentiality.
Okay, so seems to me like that I agree with Deborah Stagner regarding the expectations. If someone's putting in a request for a large amount of public records in email, especially, that you would could come up with a kind of a schedule. I think, without kind of getting in the weeds too much on this, I was just reading in the edition, and I was worried that it would come across as what is considered reasonable, who is setting the charges, is it gonna look like it's a deterrent to getting public records requests? So that's really what I was concerned about with the wording, and I don't know if there's any way to fix that in the wording. I'm not obviously an expert, but like that's my thoughts when I read it. I was worried that we weren't, well, as long as we're in compliance with the law, that's one thing, but if we are putting wording in here that's kind of wishy-washy, I worried that it could come back against us.
Ms. Walker, two additional points of context that I would offer is, we do certainly receive what would be considered absolutely reasonable and timely public records requests that we are able to answer in almost real time. It does of course happen. And then there's a scale where they go from smaller and easier to obtain in their scope to very, very large. And as we slide down that scale, when we get to the very large ones, it has been the practice, at least since I've been here, that there is essentially a batch release, if you will. So these individuals, the requesters, right, I think that they can acknowledge that 400,000 plus emails won't come to them at one time. And so we've done batch releases that Ms. Stagner's team will send to mine, and we'll turn that over to that individual. So it's a rolling process. It's not as if it's certainly not the intent, and it's not the practice that there's just no information coming from us from months and months and months. If it's large in scope, then we're able to get them chunks of information as we go to accomplish the request, and then ultimately mark it as complete once complete.
So have you figured a charge out for the non-paper? Because it says paper is 25 cents per. Have you figured out charges? Because that's what I was actually more referring to, the charges for non-paper requests. It just says actual costs determined by superintendent for public records requested in any other format. What other format? It's all digital, right? It's either paper or it's digital, right? Or is it CD as well?
Right. Well, so again, my limited experience in this particular district is that it's been electronic so far. I can certainly imagine where folks would want it in a different format, and we would look at options there. But Ms. Stagner, I'd defer to you. I think you mentioned that they would need to perhaps establish and vote upon a fee schedule to codify that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think there has been any charge for any digital release. It's uploaded into at least we upload them into a Dropbox. I think maybe the district then puts it in a PDF format and makes it available to the requester. I think what we're really talking about here is the special service charge for the extensive use of clerical or supervisory support of school system personnel. And that is, the amount of time that the internal staff, Russell, Clark, John Henry, and others spend in gathering these information. And I don't know, I've asked or asked if they have been tracking time to see what is reasonable, how long it takes for certain requests. And so that's really the cost. And I think that the district would want to adopt and publish a schedule of those costs.
All right.
Yeah.
Are we good with 50, 70?
Well,
that's what I think that Ms. Walker was trying to get at is, do you want to change the wording at all? Or do we want to hold off on until we can get a fee schedule? Because it sounds like we're the ones who get to decide what that looks like. And so these were the words that we suggested from the policy committee. So kind of like on the other one, do you have something that you want to suggest that we bring forward to the whole board to look at? Because we've already brought our suggestions forward. So is there something you want to add so that we can have something more to discuss?
Well, that was a suggestion that Ms. Stagner was just talking about, like getting that fee schedule set, because I feel like just leaving it kind of open to interpretation, you know, I think it's not that, I wouldn't say fair, but I mean, if someone wants to do a records wish, they should be able to know what they're going to be charged for that. And I feel like just leaving it saying reasonable and whatever, it's just too vague. I would like to see a fee schedule. I mean, I think that's what our attorney just said. And I just think, I know, I mean, I know this language is added in there, and I feel like it's a response to the sheer volume that, you know, requests that have been made. At the same time, we don't want to ever be accused that we're trying to deter the public from making requests. So, you know, having a fee schedule, it leaves it up to the person to say, okay, well, I want to go ahead and move forward with this request, even if it's $1 million, you know, but we don't have any idea, or they don't have any idea of what the costs are going to be. We don't either, because we haven't done that yet. So is there a way we can just try and get that done so it's posted as a policy and not just as not vague? That's what I'm asking.
Could we ask Mr. Smith to put together such a document?
May I ask a question? Is the expectation that the fee schedule be maybe the average hourly rates of certain types of positions, but that each request, we would estimate the number of hours? I mean, because the actual fee would vary depending on how, you know, large the request was. So is the fee schedule that we're recommending simply hourly rates?
Mary Hazel, I think that would be the expectation, is that you would come up with the hourly rate or salary of the cost of the person who's doing the work, and then there would have to be an estimate of how many hours it would take, and that would be the information that's passed along to the requester.
So we do have a fee schedule for, you know, school-based charges that the board approves each year. Certainly, you know, these rates could be added to that, or should it be a separate document, do you think?
I think it would be fine if there's a fee schedule that's adopted annually, that would be the place to put it.
Okay.
I would think.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
So when's that supposed to come out, Mary Hazel? Does that come out by September?
The board approved it last year. I think it's just due to be approved and published by October 15th for the law. I think ideally you would want to get it published prior to school starting, but you know, this is not a normal year. So we could certainly try to have it at the September board meeting for approval.
That would be good if you think you could do that.
Okay, as I said, speaking to what Mary Hazel was talking about, you know, 4 hours, it seems the wording here says 4 hours, 4 hours or more would be considered extensive. Are you saying under 4 hours perhaps would not be a charge, or they're all being charged? You say is extensive different, you know, because we're talking about hourly, because we just brought up the fact.
Well, so if you look about halfway, a little less than halfway, any such special service, or I'm sorry, assess a special service charge for any public records request that requires extensive use of information technology or extensive clerical or supervisory assistance. So that's the trigger. There's no special service charge unless it is extensive, and then you go down. Extensive is defined as more than 4 hours.
Okay. So that would be part of a schedule. If you guys could come up with a schedule that under 4 hours is one thing, over 4 hours is the hourly.
No, the charge wouldn't even be triggered unless there was 4 hours.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. No, but I'm saying if you list a charges kind of schedule, then that could be part of that. You know what I mean? Like in a more clear kind of maybe a table. I don't know how you guys would put that, but
So there, I think we're talking past each other. There would be zero charge unless it hit 4 hours. So there's no need for a fee schedule for anything. And the hourly charge that would be on the fee schedule. So if it's $30 an hour, if you have 3 hours of expected time, that's not extraordinary or extensive, there's zero charge. If it's 5 hours, that would be $150.
Yeah, so that, we are saying the same thing. I was just saying, if we were to put a schedule up, you could say and under, zero charge, and then you could do the schedule with the extensive charges. That's what I was saying. We were saying the same thing. I mean, wording just, I think it should be a little just more clear in that way, because there's just a lot of words here. But like, if you could do it in a more clear, concise way when it comes to charges, especially, it just would be easier for the public to understand. That's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to move on from policy 5070. We'll do the fee schedule and bring this back next month, but we have spent an extensive amount of time on all these policies and haven't gotten to any of the updates, and we only have an hour and 10 minutes remaining. So
Nelson, let's just close this out without, not so abruptly. So is our plan to bring this forward with some, like, give Deborah a chance to look at some wording and bring this forward again for a first reading or a second reading in September? What's the plan? I don't want to leave us with, I'm done talking. So can we just have a
my understanding is that we're going to develop a fee schedule, and we're going to add language and some clarity into section D.
And then when will we review that?
I guess we will do that at our next policy committee meeting, or if we can get it done quickly, we can have it for the September meeting.
Okay.
As per reading.
I would think that this would take some time to develop an estimate in terms of.
Well, let's just say what we're going to do, not like if we have time. Are we shooting to do it, to keep this in policy? Is that what I'm hearing you summarize?
Yes, I think that would be best.
Okay,
that makes sense.
Go back to the policy meeting in September. Okay. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Walker.
Thank you. All right, policy 5220, collections and solicitation.
So I had another, I mean, it's the same question I had the last time. Number 2, where we're talking about, as a rule, you may not sell commercial products during the instructional school day. But in fact, it's usually at the secondary level, not so much as the elementary school level, but the secondary level is when school clubs and fundraising groups and parent support organizations either open up their school stores or they do stuff like that. So I brought it up last time, and we didn't add any words about it. I still have the same question.
I'm sorry, so what would you like changed?
It says, as at number 2, as a general rule, students, school organizations, teachers, and other school employees may not sell commercial products during the instructional day. But at the secondary level, it's oftentimes lunch periods when school stores open, or that clubs, advertise, school spirit wear, or they, different things like that. And it's telling us here that we can't do that. And that's what we're doing. So we're going to have to tell a lot of people that they can't, or we're going to have to say, oh, I think we'll be okay with that. So I guess maybe that's something that, Dr. Faust wants to weigh in on. I'm not certain who wants to weigh in on that, but maybe Dr. Skipper wants to weigh in from a principal point of view at the secondary level. I just don't want to lose out on an opportunity that, one of the only opportunities that clubs, and parent support organizations have to do that. But if we don't want to do it, then we need to just leave it like this.
Well, I would say as a general rule allows for some flexibility. And if, a principal thinks that it's not a problem to sell this merchandise during lunch, I don't really see that as a violation of this policy. It doesn't seem absolute.
Well, it does sort of seem absolute because to me, it implies permission every time you want to do it. And does the principal want to give permission every time they want to do it? Or does the principal want to have discretion to say only on Wednesdays at lunch or whatever? So, I mean, you haven't been in, maybe, I don't know, I don't quite remember how old your kids are, but when secondary schools operate a little bit differently than elementary schools as far as this kind of stuff goes. And I had in my because I had in my notes from last time that we were considering in number 1, outside organization, parent support organizations, and oh, you know what? I think that, never mind, that was in there in the what Deborah sent us. The parent support organizations were added, but number 2 sort of negates their opportunity to do that.
Could you just say with principal approval? Would that work?
I think that would work for us.
Yeah, I would rather take out as a general rule and just say with principal approval. So because to me, as a general rule means kind of like no, and you got to jump through some hoops to get to a yes.
So it should read without principal approval, students, school organizations, teachers, and or other school employees may not sell. Absent principal approval.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Or does the board want to limit it to the lunch period though? I mean, if that's when it's occurring and you don't want it to disrupt the instructional day, I'm seeing a head shaking. You don't want to limit it to lunch? Okay.
Yeah, because each school operates differently, on that. I mean, not a whole lot differently. Well, Dr. Skipper School probably operates differently than a traditional high school. And we're going to be able to have the opportunity to hear from other other principals, on a rotating basis. But I only used the lunch example because that's when I am most familiar that this activity occurs.
I would just like to add the word absent principal approval and take out as a general rule.
Why don't I make this suggestion? Just take out as a general rule, start with students, school organizations, teachers, and or other school employees may not sell commercial products during the instructional school day without prior principal approval.
I'm good with that.
That sounds good.
I'm seeing a head nod. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, so with the amended language, policy 5220 will go on
I
for.
wanted to ask one more question. So in the cross references, it says crowdfunding on behalf of the school system, policy 7360. Again, we've thrown in a policy that we don't even have yet, and it's not even mentioned in this policy. So is it premature to put that reference in there? I know we're allowing crowdfunding. So if we are, I guess we probably should jump to that policy pretty quickly since school is starting.
Again, I think that there are lots of references, cross-references to policies that will be adopted that haven't been yet. If you take it out now, then you'll have to go back and remember to add them all back in at some other point.
Okay.
Okay, so are we good to move this forward?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, policy 5220 will be on for first reading at the September meeting. Next policy, advertising in schools, 5240. And who wants to take us through this one?
I think that I think this one's mine. I sent around some language. And so the request was to make sure that parent support organizations could sell advertising, which has been the practice. And so I wanted to draw your attention first to the paragraph A, because if you'll remember, we made changes to the distribution and display of non-school material to include some for-profit businesses, which had not been added before. And so if you'll see, this policy is intended to govern requests to advertise by individuals and by organizations that were not otherwise permitted to distribute or display materials by policy 5210. So to make this consistent with policy 5210, I made those changes at the first part of this policy here. Does that make sense? Okay. And then moving down to section D, the very I added a paragraph to say that school officials may designate a parent support organization or other school-related group as defined in that policy to sell or permit advertising in accordance with this policy for the benefit of the school. Now that may be confusing, but the two policies really work together. The one, 5210, defines a school-related group. It says they have certain rights to distribute and display material on school property. And so I thought that by cross-referencing the two, you would accomplish that goal of allowing a school official, instead of selling the advertising on behalf of the school themselves, that they could designate the parent support organization or booster club to have that role. The only question then I think that leaves is what school official makes that decision. Is it because the policy doesn't really say whether it's the principal, superintendent, communications department, whatever.
Yeah, because I had that question too, Deborah. What I was asking in letter F, it says any person or individual entity or individual interested in advertising must submit a request to the principal. So so I was thinking, are we requiring, our parent support organizations to say, hey, principal, we've got, Domino's Pizza that's going to hang up a banner. Do we have to get that approval, or are they just allowed to do that?
I do think that you have to have the principal involved in order to regulate, or some designated school official to make sure that the request for advertising complies with the policy. You need to have that level of control over it so that it's not just wide open to anyone to come in.
Okay, so
I'm good with those changes. I think the cross-reference is appropriate.
I just want to bring up that this is not for us to do, it's for Dr. Faust and team to do, but this would be a deviation from what is current practice. So principals will need to talk with their parent support organizations, primarily, athletic boosters, about signage that they hang in gyms, on football, on stadiums, and maybe even like, band boosters, if they, put up, signs of their people too. So there's a lot of organizations and PTAs I've seen in schools when I go, that they have, this business has contributed $100, so they're to the PTA. So they've got banners, listed. So I think there's going to have to be some discussion with parents. With parent support organizations, which we can handle the PTA, tomorrow, to talk to them about that. But we won't be in front of, athletic boosters or band boosters or choral boosters or academic boosters and all those other kinds of organizations that sell banners, and it's mainly banners. It's not, I don't think we're talking here about, in yearbooks, because that was put someplace else.
May I ask a clarifying question? I read this a little different in that the principal could meet with them and approve that type of activity. They wouldn't have to approve each one, not each banner and each advertisement sold, but that they would allow, the Booster Club to sell advertising. Ms. Stagner, do you read it? Do you understand it differently, or could they do a more generic approval?
No, I think that the principal can meet with the Booster Club or the PTA and say, you've got the authority to designate, in the cafeteria or the gym or wherever you can hang up your banners through this school year. You need to comply with this policy. What you don't want is to just have a free-for-all that creates an open forum that then is unregulated and anyone has an opportunity to come in and put something up. So I do think that needs to be channeled through the principal. I don't think that they have to come to approve every single banner if the guidelines have been set at the beginning of the year.
So that would be a procedure, not a policy. But it does say in here that the school, that you must submit a request to the principal for advertising specific to an individual school. So maybe that's just one request when they get all their banners done, but and it's probably a more of a school thing, but that will be confusing if we don't address it somewhere. So if policy is too high level, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that we don't get ourselves, caught up in something we don't want to get caught up on if we're saying we have to have individual approval from the principal.
I mean, I certainly think that could take place in, training or, reviewing procedures with principals who would then review those with the various groups.
Okay.
But if you think, if the committee thinks it needs additional language, I can certainly take some direction and work on something else. But I think the policy is broad enough to allow what you're talking about.
Okay. I just don't want anybody to get caught off guard. Because school's getting ready to start and the organizations are already out there doing their fundraising and sponsorship solicitation. So, it's happening now. So if we need to make a change, now is the time to tell folks before we get into school.
Who is responsible for, who would be responsible for making sure that principals are aware of this new policy if it's adopted?
I would say the superintendent.
This would fall under communications, marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. We would utilize, we have several means to contact on a weekly basis the principals, and it would just be incorporated into those internal communication efforts, of which we're also revamping. So we'll make sure they get the information.
And also, like, I'm guessing Jackie and Al can just, when they're out in the schools, can just look, not like make an inspection, but just, they'll notice those kinds of things when they're out there.
And so, Ms. Crable, I think this might be a good segue to just talk about 5210 in conjunction, because again, there is a lot of interplay between the two.
Yep.
And so, I don't, Kim, if you could pull that up.
And I don't even have 5210. And that's another one. That wasn't even on our list to discuss, but I did have that in my notes that, on something else with 5210.
So if you'll, again, so this first part, I just added, I added that language because that was in, later on in the for-profit entities, that was later on in the policy. I think that's just a clarification. But if you'll go to the bottom third of page 3, where the next highlighted language is. Oh, I'm sorry. My page numbering is that the next highlighted section. On mine, it's page 3, but it looks like
Under all structure.
Yeah, no, Kim, I'm sorry. Your pages are different because the track changes aren't showing up. Okay, there it is. The distribution and delay. So this is where the school-related groups that have received prior approval of the principal are allowed to display materials in the school. So this would be the school-related groups are defined as the PTOs, the booster clubs, et cetera. So this policy already allows them to display things in the school. So the PTA can put up a banner that says, PTA meeting on this night, et cetera. The only thing that is changed now is that in the advertising section, it is explicit that the principal can designate that selling of advertising to the PTA, who already has the ability to display things in the school, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay. And then again, I just highlighted at the very bottom that school-related group is already defined in this policy as PTA, teachers, and principals, organizations, and booster clubs. So.
Okay. So where in policy 5240 or 5210 are we addressing the non-school related trips that our employees, that some of our employees sponsor, but not as a school system employee? And it's usually in the summer or on breaks when they travel to abroad or to other places.
That's addressed in section B, as in boy, number 3F.
Okay.
For-profit companies offering educational opportunities such as tutoring and group field trips.
Okay.
So that was something that we added, the policy committee added last time.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because the one that we got sent in our packet and yours, I'm just trying to compare back and forth to make sure we got it all covered.
Yeah, for some reason, it looks like the one that I sent you. I don't know. Can you click on the track changes so that it actually shows?
Yeah, because I was trying to, and this was such a mess. It was like a gunshot, wound with all the red.
Yeah. But if you go down a little bit further to that same section, you'll see, there we go, a little bit further down to F. There we go. So it shows that that's the language that was added policy committee last time.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was just making sure. In letter D, did we want to add after community colleges, universities, and do we want to add trade schools or anything like that in there? Or is that, because they're not nonprofit institutions, trade schools, they are, but they're not community colleges or universities. Like let's say that like they're offering like a summer apprenticeship for, and it's probably more like in, CTE world. GE has a program where they, teach, specifics about nuclear. I know that, Cherry Point down in Brunswick County, Duke Energy, has programs like that. Are they allowed to advertise, to our students?
I think that might fall under F again, for-profit companies offering educational opportunities.
Okay.
If you add it to D, then I think you run the risk of having those for-profit schools that may not be on the up and up that take advantage of students.
Okay, I can see that. All right, so the only other thing that I had been comparing them back and forth, in 5240 in letter B, where it says gender, you didn't put gender identity there, but you did put it in another location in the policy.
Yeah.
I think you just like skipped it by accident.
I'm sure.
It's B, and it's in the 1, 2, 3, 4th line down.
I'm not seeing it.
5240, 5240.
Oh, 5240. Okay, I'm the wrong policy altogether.
I went
Okay.
back, I left, yeah, because I have them both sitting here since you said, let's look at them in tandem, but I never got rid of the other one.
Okay. B.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, fourth line down where it says gender.
Oh, I have that added in mine.
Okay, yeah, because all right, the one that I was looking at, it didn't show it, so that's all right.
So this is the one that's on the screen. This is the one that I just sent
Yeah,
yesterday afternoon.
yeah, and I thought I was looking at it because I'm comparing both, but I'm good.
Okay, does anybody else have anything on 5240 or 5210? Mr. Wildenbohr, are you good here?
I'm good.
Okay, 5240 is on for first reading.
And 5210 also.
And 5210 also. Thank you, Ms. Graybill. Okay, moving on. Policy 6140, student wellness. Ms. Varnum, are you going to take us through this one?
Sure. So I want to be clear that I understand the purpose in revisiting, other than offering an update on alignment to our previous policy. Is that it? Sort of, but there was a couple things that we talked about last time, and the changes were made when we said lead wellness official, change that to wellness coordinator. But one of the things that we needed to look at was in section A, the second paragraph, when it was talking about the membership on SHAC, that we have a school board member designated on that, and that's not required, that's not required in our board policy, on board committees. So that one I wanted to make sure that we had checked in there. And then was wondering if in that same section, the number 5, social and emotional climate, do we have to include our social emotional learning plan when we report to the Healthy Active Children policy to DPI? I mean, are they that interrelated? I don't know that they are that interrelated yet. However, a part of the reporting does ask for documentation and artifacts on any other strategies or efforts toward the same goals. And so we would want to link that so that it's clear that we have these things going on in tandem and that they're aligned. So generally, when we complete a self-assessment or a report such as this, we'll make sure that we cross-reference and tie in other pieces that are maybe not necessarily required by the particular reporting entity, but certainly contribute to those same goals. So we will be including our mental health plan, which includes not only school-based mental health, but also the social emotional learning implementation. We will include that in the report. And I actually have, I have just been reviewing a draft of a report or presentation that can be provided to the board. Still working on that with Dr. Pinto. Okay, yeah, so and kind of along those same lines, if you read down through, like in section B, there's a couple places where in it, section B is one of them, and section D is another one where it says we're supposed to insert the board goals here, see appendix, and the appendix gives some examples of what board goals should be. Well, our board doesn't even have goals for itself, so we don't have board goals for SHAC. So it would be hard to approve this policy without us having even talked about it. So this might be a work session item for us that somebody could lead us through, like not somebody, Dr. Pinto and Lauren Tyson, who is our lead, it was our wellness coordinator, might be able to lead us through that. So I'm going to have a hard time passing this policy without having any board goals inserted.
And keep in mind that those might also fluctuate. So they might
Right.
only be goals for a period of time and then revisited. So I think that my recommendation would be to establish membership from the board onto the School Health Advisory Council. And then with that partnership on the School Health Advisory Council, working through the goal setting activities that are provided to the council. And when that's done, I think that needs to come back from that committee or council to policy.
Yeah, because I'm sorry. go
I'm in
ahead.
complete, no, I said I'm in complete agreement. I think that's exactly the course that this policy needs to take. I don't think we can pass it, and I will speak to Miss Adams after
Yeah,
this
because
meeting.
SHAC has its own, I mean, I'm on the SHAC, and I have been for, like 15 years. We have our own goals that we do. And my question was, are SHAC goals, ipso facto board goals, or because it really says that we have to work in conjunction to set these goals. And that federal law requires the board to include measurable goals, on several different things. So there's a lot that we are not quite doing right now. That in order to move this one forward.
Okay,
And
so
this
what-
policy cannot move forward until, I mean, it's supposed to be reviewed and developed in conjunction with the council. So it really isn't ready to be moved forward until it goes through that process.
So Dr. Faust, perhaps this is after Dr. Pinto and Lauren have their first SHAC committee meeting, which is normally like the in September, that we can talk about what the policy is gonna look like, and we can go from that, and then maybe we can have a work session. That to me would be a good opportunity for a work session. When maybe in September, or maybe in October, or maybe the second September board meeting. Because it would be nice to give SHAC an opportunity to kind of meet and, talk about where they were.
And Dr. Pinto and I have reviewed this policy draft, and she, like I said, has prepared an update as to where, based on existing current policy and this policy draft, kind of a side-by-side review of the requirements and whether those requirements are currently met or would require further work. And so we have that side-by-side ready. It's just, we need to make sure we have, if the board determines, as this policy draft suggests, to have a board member representative on that council. In addition, because I know Ms. Craybill, you've been on that council for quite some time. I know
Not as
it's
a
been
board
prior
member.
to your official capacity.
Yeah, I was the PTA council representative, at that point. So yes, I'm not operating in my board capacity, on that committee as of now.
Okay, so we're gonna hold these and move on to policy 6300, if that's okay with everybody. 6300 is goals of student transportation services. Mr. Anderson.
Good morning. So actually, if you'd like, all of the transportation, student transportation services policies, I reviewed those with Mark Clausen, specifically because it references a lot of state law, a lot of transportation procedures, and a lot of training that's required. And I wanted to make sure that we have all that in place, and we do. So with all of the transportation policies, there was only one policy that we did have a comment on, and that's in 6340. So unless the policy committee members have questions or comments in other policies, and maybe we could jump to that.
Well, I had one on, I had one on 65 6305.
Okay.
When we were talking about section C, use of seatbelts, are any of the buses that have seatbelts, are we putting three kids in a seat, or do we only have seatbelts for 2 kids per seat?
No, the seat belts would be in accordance with the bus capacity. Not all of our buses have seat belts, but the seat belts would be in accordance with the bus capacity of 72 which would be 3 students in a seat for elementary school and 2 students in a seat for secondary schools. But
But we wouldn't put 3 kids in a seat if we didn't have 3 seatbelts.
correct.
Okay. All right. That's what I was getting at.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
And then down in letter D, video cameras will be used to monitor behavior on school buses. We have video cameras on all of our buses now.
We do.
Okay, good. D, number 2, where it says students shall not rush to get off the bus. That's kind of like one, in the safety world, we don't use words like, like do not rush, it's more like walk in an orderly manner. We kind of say what we want them to do versus what we don't want them to do. Is that, can we change that to be something more positive?
I'm fine with that.
So to say students shall shall get off the bus, on and off the bus in an orderly manner, or whatever words make more sense, to bus driving lingo.
I like that language. I
Yeah.
think that language is appropriate.
Okay, and then in number 4, where it says, with the permission of the driver, students may converse quietly with the person sitting next to them. So am I to understand that we have a policy that says no talking on the school bus unless the bus driver says you can talk?
In practice, it usually works the other way around.
Right.
Yeah, but there's not a written board policy.
Okay, so do we even need that line? And or say something, they should take their seats quickly, remain seated and face front at all times. Students may talk quietly with the person. I just don't want it. The bus driver has too many other permissions to give. Do we need that?
Why don't we just strike that line if that's all right, Mr. Anderson?
That would be fine.
Okay. Now you guys are very thorough. That's good. That's all I have.
Yeah, these policies were very thorough. Could you go to 6340, please? Uh, 6340. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, the only recommended change in this policy is in the 3rd paragraph, where it says the superintendent shall ensure that school system contracts for, instead of student transportation services, I recommend changing that to commercial bus transportation services. That's really what this policy is referring to, commercial bus transportation. And there may be, other means of student transportation, and we're only maintaining an approved list for the commercial bus transportation.
Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Anderson. I flagged that as well and had done a little bit of research and talked to McKenna at the School Board Association about that, and she recognized that that was a misleading statement in their sample policy and is going to correct it when the next revision goes out. But that whole sentence should be part of the paragraph above it, And I think that's a good change to clarify that this is only talking about those charter buses that are used for activities.
Oh, this goes for buses?
You may have, for example, you may contract with a company to transport special education students who need specific transportation services, and there would not be an approved list that is for those. That would be done on a case-by-case basis.
All right, well, so I have a question about that then. So I know that schools sometimes have vouchers from WAVE, in order to get students or like to and from an after school meeting or with their parents, or sometimes we have taxi passes and that kind of stuff. Where does that fall in?
Julie, can you respond to that?
I don't know necessarily where it falls into policy, but I can tell you that that's been partnership with our transportation department over the last several years, especially for students during the school day who need to move from location to location, specifically our students that are in the transition program for young adults and who are learning to independently move through the community before they age out. These are students with disabilities and they age out because they are not actually students that graduate with a diploma, but they are able to stay with us through the school year in which they turn 22. So while they are going into job coaching, either employment or other activities, we support them in public transportation. So I'm not sure exactly where that falls into policy, but that is a part of the expectation for community-based instruction.
Okay, well, that is not what I was thinking about, but that is wonderful that we have that opportunity.
Sorry.
No, that's good. That's a good explanation. But I was thinking about, and maybe we're not doing it anymore, but I know that counselors or social workers or principals have discretionary passes for using public transportation for our students. And so I was wondering, where that fell in under, like service. I mean, it's not really a contract. We're just giving them a pass. But if they're going, to and from school or in between schools, then are they covered by our insurance if something happens and we've given them the pass?
I'm not aware of that.
I'm not either.
Well, maybe we are not doing it anymore, but I'm going to tell you what, when I helped, negotiate that deal, and Communities in Schools was the partnering agency that we gave out passes to the principals at the traditional high schools to get them to and from some things. So I just was wondering, maybe we're not doing it anymore.
What's the timeline on that?
Ms. Crable, I do recall that being something that has been done in the past. I would need to check with our current high school principals and probably Mr. Alabryant to see if that's something that we're consistently or that we're continuing to do.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, because he was definitely one of the principals who was using them. So that would be a good data point. And at some point I thought we also, had cab service, and maybe that was just for getting parents, to and from meetings that they needed to be at a school and they had no transportation. So that could be that.
We do have cab services that we use under contract for specific needs, mainly for students with disabilities or a particular medical need. And we follow a specific process for that. And there's communication with our principals, making sure that they follow that same process, because generally the contract is held for specific reasons and not just to get a student home or something like that, but usually in cooperation with parents. So that's a process that's held under contracts.
Okay, so where would that be? What policy would I even begin to look for something like that?
I think that would fall under the the very first paragraph, the board may enter contracts with public or private carriers.
Okay.
And so those sorts of private carriers are what I was talking about for like special needs students.
Okay.
All right, does anybody have anything else? Mr. Wildebohr?
I'm good.
Okay, well, we will put 6340 on the September agenda for first reading. And believe it or not, that is all the policies that we have for today. Mr. Anderson, you did a very good job. Thank you for.
So, Mr. Boyer, are you going to, let's see, place all of the student transportation services 6300 through 6340?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. We didn't have any other comments.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
And Mr.
All right,
I
so with
also-
all of our policies,
Oh, sorry.
There's one policy, Nelson, that we had on hold that Mary Hazel was checking into, policy 3620, about fees for clubs.
that's right.
I did
Miss-
recall
Miss
with a little help from Nancy
Lee.
what the question was. So we had, we were in a discussion last month about child nutrition fees, and the question came up, if a parent hadn't paid, you know, were there any situations where the student could not participate? And that's where we came back to this policy. So this policy and a financial procedure that supports it does say that, you know, principals have the, I guess, the discretion. It was back up in that first section in that third paragraph. Here we go. So just a little bit further down, there you go, at the bottom of that third paragraph. School administrators choosing to exercise this authority. So we have a procedure that let me pull it up so I'm not guessing, sorry. We're saying it shouldn't be for small fees. So if they owe $1, you know, they shouldn't be. I think we say less than small amounts due students should not be restricted. So less than $20. And then they shouldn't be restricted from anything instructional. So any instructional field trip or anything like that, but any extracurricular, which is defined as dances, proms, clubs, field day, even parking on campus, those kinds of things, we have restricted, principals have restricted in the past based on the current policy with this language, or the previous policy, which is now in the new one. So the question is, you know, is that something the board wants to continue? I feel strongly that principals want to continue it, but we're offering clarification last month because I quickly said no and then realized it was yes, and I'd forgotten. So it's really the board's choice here.
Yeah, I think we want to continue with that. I think I haven't heard any serious complaints on the issue, and if principals are comfortable with it, Dr. Faust is comfortable with it, I'm definitely in favor of keeping.
And then of you know, kind of playing my Julie here is the if there seems to be a hardship or a problem, then obviously we would work with that student and their family to make sure that a fee did not get in the way, you know, of being able to join in on the other well-roundedness of a school experience. Is that
Well,
right?
I think, you know, that they could always apply for free and reduced lunch too, if they need to. So that's always an option if they're, you know, in need.
And just to clarify, it's any fees owed. So it's not just, it came up out of child nutrition, but it's any fees owed to the school.
Like library fines, you know, lost books, you know, lost textbooks, laptop not turned in, you know, all of that.
IDCs, all those things, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so do we need to, we don't need to do anything with this then? This just stays as is and we don't have to go back through it at a board meeting?
No, yeah, that was just
okay.
Okay, all right, thanks, Mary Hazel, because I was, you know, going, what in the heck did I just do?
Thank you.
Okay, well, we have completed our policy committee meeting 20 minutes early. I believe that is a first. I also will go on a limb and predict it'll be a last. But since that is all of our updates, I will go ahead and do this in 3 pieces. At this time, I will entertain a motion to put forward amended policies 2330, 2660, and 6245 for the board's consideration at the September board meeting. Is there a
Yeah.
motion?
Say those again, Nelson.
The policies that we agreed to amend, these do not have to go on for first reading, are policies 2330, 2660, and 6245.
62. I don't know that, did we talk about 62?
That was the employee dress code.
6435. You mean the dress code?
Yes, the employee
That's
dress code.
That's 6435.
Thank you. 6435.
And so these ones we just bring up at the September meeting and as what? As second or first?
They do not go on for first reading, and I apologize. 6435 will go on in August.
Yeah, and I had in my notes that 6435, 2330, and yeah, that those 2 definitely would go for the August the 17th. And Deborah said she thought she could get those 2 done for August 17th.
Okay, so the motion would be to accept or to put on the agenda 2330 and 6245 for August 17th.
That's what I wrote down, but I could have written it wrong.
Is there a motion?
Oh, I'll make a motion. Yes,
I'll
definitely.
second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Ms. Craybill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Wildebohr, how do you vote?
Yay.
I vote yes. 2330 and 6245 are on the agenda at the August 17th meeting. Now I will entertain a motion to place policy 2660 on the agenda for the September board meeting.
And that's just as a go through, like we don't have to discuss it. Like an amendment to the policy.
That's correct.
Okay. Yes, I'll do that.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Craybill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Wildebohr, how do you vote?
Yes.
I am a yes. It is on for the September meeting. 2 more. At this time, I will entertain a motion to place policy 5120 on the September agenda for second reading.
Yes, so moved.
There's a
Second.
motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Craybill, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Wildebohr, how do you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes. Policy 5120 is on for second reading in September. Now I will entertain a motion to adopt to place policies 4700, 5015, 5220, 5240, 5210, 6300, 6325, 6330, 6322, 6321, 6315, 6320, 6310, 6306, and 6305 on the agenda in September for reading.
All right, so 6,300, I didn't hear you say. Can we just say all the 6,000 through, because you read them out of number order, so I was trying to check them all off. because they're listed in number order on our agenda.
Yeah, I know. I just
Just trying to make,
wrote
yeah,
it down.
you were like all over the place. So I was just trying to make sure I had them all.
Yeah, I said 6,300.
Where do we have policy 5070? I thought that was going to be in September.
I had that in my notes. That's coming back to the policy committee in
Okay.
September, not to the full board.
5070 is coming back
50,
to policy.
5070.
5070. Okay. All right. I'm just trying to check them all off to make sure that I have.
Give me a second, Flo. Give me a minute.
Yeah. Okay. And then 6140 is also going back to policy.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I think I'll make a motion to all those ones that you listed.
Thank you, Ms. Crable. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Waldemore. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Crable, how will you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Waldemore, how do you vote?
Yes.
I also vote yes. The policies as listed are on for first reading at the September board meeting. Now I will enter a motion to adjourn.
Well, I'm just want to just check. Are there any that we have to rescind?
The board rescinds the policies.
Yes.
So, yeah, Ms. Crable, once the board approves a set of policies, those get sent to McKenna Osborne at the School Board Association, and she sends a list of the policies that would go to the board to be rescinded based on what's been adopted.
Gotcha.
Okay, so is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Crable, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Waldemore, how do you vote?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Everybody enjoy an earlier than usual lunch and have a good rest of your work week. I will see you all next week.
Take care.